Let's cover influence crafting, and I'm not meaning eldritch influence. I'm talking about conqueror influence, shaper, and elder. It's going to be a bit complex, and it's mainly used for expensive items. Most of you don't really need to know how to craft with this because eldritch influence is so powerful that you don't need to go for the basic influences. But sometimes some builds will use the basic influences like conqueror or shaper elder. Uh, Also, very expensive crafts, super niche items. Only a few are going to use this type of crafting. For most of you, it's not going to be necessary, but I'm going to explain it anyway so that you understand how it works. Let's go to body armor. Here, these are the 6 influences: Shaper, Elder, Crusader, Hunter, Warlord, and Redeemer. When an item has an influence, because more modifiers get added to the pool, it means that your chance of hitting base modifiers is going to be lower because the weighting will increase. Not by much, but still your chance of hitting base modifiers will be lowered. All these influence modifiers right here can be tagged with influence harvest, reforge influence from harvest. All of these modifiers right here. And general tags like cold mana, they can be targeted with other crafting methods such as fossils. Attack can be targeted with meta modes and stuff like that. Um, Also harvest. The most basic way to craft, it's going to be, let's go to the emulator, it's going to use Conqueror Exalts. So let's just say that you make a pair of boots. Now I'm just giving an example. You make this pair of boots and it has 5 modifiers, and you don't care about eldritch implicits, or maybe it's a weapon, something like that. It has 5 modifiers. You already crafted something on it, and you really don't need a base modifier. They are all useless. All the base modifiers are useless. You don't care about using eldritch currency on it. What you'd do, you'd use this exalted orb, this conqueror exalted orb. This will make the item have crusader influence and will guarantee one crusader modifier. And since this item has an empty suffix, it will guarantee a suffix conqueror modifier like this. You can see suffix crusader, chance to avoid being ignited. That would be the most basic version of crafting. Now, as you can see right here, these exalts can be used to add an influence to an item, but there are only 4 exalts. Shaper and Elder items have to be dropped. If the Shaper and Elder items are not dropped, you cannot add influence to them. That's one thing to keep in mind. Sometimes when you're buying an influence base, for example, you're buying a Stygian Vice that has Hunter influence on it, maybe it's better to just buy the Stygian Vice rare and then just buy the Hunter Exalted Orb. It's going to be much cheaper. You have to do the math here, but basically this is how it works. Now, if your item is influenced and you go to Harvest, Reforge Influence, when you hit Reforge Influence, it will guarantee one influenced modifier. And the only influence modifier is going to be from this list right here. Now this is Crusader, so we go to the Crusader. Uh, Crusader. So these are the Crusader modifiers. These are the prefixes, and these are the Crusader suffixes that can appear. So when you hit it with Harvest Reforge Influence, it will guarantee you one influence modifier. This is very basic influence crafting. Now let's go into more advanced influence crafting. One, it's going to be using the Awakener's Orb. In the past, this was This was used to make +2 amulets, but it was changed about 1 year ago, something like that, and it's no longer used like this. This is mainly used to craft mirror tier items or super good items with elevated modifiers. And now let's talk about elevated modifiers. This item right here called Orb of Dominance. Basically, if your item has at least two influenced modifiers, when you are using this, one modifier will be removed and the other modifier will be upgraded. And if it hits a high enough tier, the highest tier, it will be elevated. What I mean by that, if you go to Path of Exile and you look at the influence modifiers, there's not much here. But if you go to PoE okay, you go to PoE let's go to modifiers. And you select any item that can be influenced. It doesn't matter. And let's just look at Crusader influence or something like that. When you click on this, it will say elevated of the Crusade. This is an elevated modifier. So when you are using Orb of Dominance, if for example your item has 9 this tier of increased intelligence and the Orb of Dominance will increase its tier of this item, it will give you a new modifier which is going to be +1 to level of socketed intelligence gems and 9 to 10 increased intelligence. This can only be obtained um, with elevated Orb of Dominance. Now let's just show you a quick body armor. Let's restart so that you understand what I'm talking about. So I'm going to create a Vol Regalia, and I want this Vol Regalia to be rare. I want to make it Hunter influenced. Um, let's just go harvest Reforge influence until I hit uh, increased intelligence. So right here I have this item with increased intelligence, but I only have this influence modifier. I need another influence modifier. So I would spam Reforge influence at harvest until I would hit two influence modifiers, one of which is the one that I desire. And I'm not going to spam anymore, I'm just going to add it like this to not waste time. But right now I have increased intelligence and this Crusader modifier. Both are influenced. When I'm using an Orb of Dominance, one will be deleted and the other one will be raised entire. It removed the increased intelligence, so now we have to try it again. Um, Once again, it removed it. Now you would have to add another influence modifier. How you would go about this? If the modifier is too hard to hit and you start from tier 1, at this point you would say suffixes cannot be changed. You would craft, you would go to the bench, you would craft suffixes cannot be changed. You would once again go to harvest reforge influence. It added a prefix, and now you'd use Orb of Dominance in the hopes that it will elevate the +1 intelligence. It did not, and you just repeat this process until you get the elevated intelligence. As you can see, this is very costly, but right now you have this body armor that has +1 to level of socketed intelligence gems, 9 to 12% increased. So this is an elevated modifier. What you would do at this point, we would assume that you want another influence modifier to be, because now you want to uh, you want to use an Awakener's orb. Uh, to use an Awakener's orb, basically you look at what other modifier I would want. Maybe I would want um, increased intelligence right here. But can this modifier appear with this increased intelligence from here? And the answer is no, because they share the same category. The number right here, it's 3. As you can see right here, it's 3. And the number on Crusader Influence is also 3. So they cannot appear. You have to go for something else. Maybe you want spell critical strike chance, like this. You would go to the emulator once again, create a new base now. Another body armor. One has to be the right base. I mean, the Vol Regalia item level 86. The other one you don't have to care because one item will be destroyed in the process. So let's just say that we want Shaper and we are interested in the suffix of critical spell strike chance. Usually it's best to go for either 2 prefixes from the same or 2 suffixes. I would use this, make this item. Let's just say that it looks something like this. Add another influence modifier. Uh, Remove. And once again use an orb of dominance until it elevates your spell crit chance. And as you can see, we get very unlucky. Now this is elevated. This spell crit chance is elevated, and at this point you have 2 items. These 2 items have only one influence modifier. Is very important. Both influence modifiers are elevated, and at this point what you would do, you would use an Awakener orb. This Awakener orbs destroys the first item, it takes its influence modifiers, it applies it. It takes one of his influence modifiers, but since my item only has one influence modifier, it will take just this modifier and it will apply it to the second item. The second item keeps its base, keeps its item level, keeps one of its influence modifiers, but once again, since we only have one influence modifier, it will keep this one. So it will I'm copying this item, I'm pasting it here, and I'm not sure why it doesn't work. But anyway, I'm not sure why it doesn't work here, but this is the idea. You use an Awakener orb in game to create the item, and it would look something like this. Let's go to the suffixes of Shaper, uh, spell crit stractions, and it would look something like this. And now our item, as you can see right here, this is Shaper influence, this is Crusader influence. It has these modifiers, and it will also give you some other modifiers, something like this. If it gives you uh, if it gives you a bad suffix and you really care about that suffix, the only way to do it would be to go and either use an orb of annulment or to go to beast crafting and remove suffix add prefix. But probably orb of annulment would be your best bet until you end up with something like this. Remove, and you have an empty prefix. At this point you would go and craft from the bench. Craft suffixes cannot be changed, like this. You'd use an orb of scouring. If you care about I don't know, a veiled modifier, at this point you could do that, but let's just say you want chaos resistance. At this point, what you would do with craft, once again, suffixes cannot be changed. Then you would go with harvest and reforge, add remove chaos. It will remove this prefix and give you, actually it doesn't work like this. So you cannot use harvest, you cannot use add remove because it's influenced. You cannot use force just because. Uh, so at this point you'd have to use a reforge, and the problem with reforge is it's going to give you bad modifiers, so it can break your item. But very rarely it happens, so you'd have to gamble. Very rarely, as you can see right here, very rarely it happens to give you 3 prefixes. So let's go back to our initial um, initial crafting method. So you'd craft suffixes cannot be changed, and you'd just simply jump straight into reforge chaos without scouring, because you cannot use add remove. And sometimes it happens that it gives you 3 prefixes like this. If this happens, you can only use an orb of annulment, and it can destroy your item, as it happened here. But if it removes a prefix at this point, you would craft suffixes cannot be changed, and use an orb of scouring. Once again, suffixes cannot be changed. You would go maybe use H-Link Veil. Now you have a veiled prefix. You would craft something to block. Maybe you would craft maximum life or whatever else you would craft to block. You would unveil this, get whatever you're interested. I'm not sure. And basically, this is how you craft with influence. It's very expensive. It's usually not worth it. Most likely, it's for high-end um, 60, 70 a mirrored item. Uh, this is the basic idea of how to craft with influence. Most of you are not going to use this because eldritch items are so much better than this influence, but sometimes you are going to have to use this type of crafting with influence. But anyway, this is how you do it. This was everything that I had to say about influence crafting. Um, Quite expensive, and I don't think it's worth it most of the time.